Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we've got to look at Alolan Vulpix VSTAR, which, I'm going to be honest with you, right, I point out when I'm right, and I point out when I'm wrong, and I was wrong about this. All the rumours we had about this set told us that there was going to be an Alolan Vulpix VSTAR, and I said, no there isn't. I don't think I ever said this in a video, but I said this to all of my friends. I said, no, there isn't going to be an Alolan Vulpix V-Star. That doesn't make any sense. We don't get evolving V-Stars. We don't get Pokemon V-Star that still can evolve. That doesn't happen. I refuse to believe it's going to happen here. Well, I think at this stage it's fair to say that I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong, ladies and gentlemen, because we have got it right here, and I'll be honest with you, it looks really, really good. Although, I do want it on the record. This is, as it stands at the moment, the only V-Star we've had that has a known evolution. So, I was right according to the pattern, but apparently I should have believed the rumours. Translations here are mostly from myself, but I did need a little bit of a hand from the lovely Antoine Boulet to finish it off. Boo. So what we've got here is the actual brand new set, Incandescent Arcana. This is, of course, the set we knew we were going to have. And front and centre on that set, we've got Alolan Vulpix. And that is telling us that we've got Alolan Vulpix V-Star. Now, starting off with a V, we've got 190 HP. Which is honestly quite low for a Pokemon V, but it is Alolan Vulpix. And because it's an Alolan Pokemon, we have an attack for 0 energy. Free attack! Which again, you don't tend to see on regular Pokemon, but on Alolan Pokemon, Galarian Pokemon, etc. you do. 10 damage, but if your opponent's active Pokemon is a Pokemon V, you deal 60 instead. And it's fine, but it's honestly not particularly great. I'll be honest with you. The problem is that 60 damage doesn't do very much. Obviously, you're not KOing a Pokemon V. Now, what I will say is, there's nothing here that says it doesn't hit for weakness. So, and admittedly, this is not a deck we're seeing a huge amount of play right now. But if something like Victini were to come back, this wouldn't KO a Victini, but it would deal 120 damage and do really a decent amount of damage towards getting a KO. Actually, no, I'm lying to you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a really specific circumstance, all right? But against a Victini, if you had a choice belt, then you're up to 180 with weakness, and then with something like a Galarian Zigzagoon, you'll get a KO. Like I've said, we're asking quite a lot here. I don't expect to actually do this ever, but because you're hitting for weakness, and because Choice Belt exists, you can legit do like 180 damage. Turn 1, going second, for 0 energy against a weak Pokemon V. And there aren't really that many Fire Pokemon V that are seeing a huge amount of play right now, and you got to have Choice Belt, and even then 180 is probably not enough to get many KOs. I understand all of this. I just want it on the record that there is a situation where this actually does like a legit impressive amount of damage. We've then got free energy 110. No one's ever using that. We're interested in the first attack, and that is it. As for the V-Star here, we go up to 240, which is low, incidentally. That is as low as we ever really see on a Pokemon V-Star. That is the bottom end. But, you know, it's an Alolan Vulpix. What did you expect? And what we've got is an attack which I almost translated myself, but then they went and added an awkward bit on the end which foiled me. For 1 water, 2 colourless energy, you deal 160 damage. This attack's damage isn't affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. During your next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by Pokemon with abilities. Yes. This is brilliant. Now, don't get me wrong, right? In terms of the damage isn't great. Now, against something like a Victini V Max, and again, that's not really seeing a huge amount of play at the moment, but you never know, might come back. then you're dealing 320 with the weakness, you're getting a KO, life is good. This is a 2-hit KO attack. You're 1-hit KOing with weakness, but that's generally not going to happen all that much. General rule here is that we are going to be getting a 1-hit KO with weakness, 2-hit KO otherwise. But firstly, you go through any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. So your opponent sees you coming and they're like, ha 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 ha, I'm playing Miltank. This is why I play Miltank. Miltank is really good for this exact situation because it's got an ability to prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V. And you're like, man, that sure does sound like an effect on your opponent's active Pokemon. Now I get a KO anyway. So being able to ignore stuff like Miltank is absolutely huge and I absolutely love it. I think this is a great attack and I'm all in. I am absolutely all in. This is good. It's a really useful attack. But then, next turn you prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by Pokemon with abilities, and that is any Pokemon with an ability. I mean, something like a Miltank could then not come back and hit you next turn, which would be amazing. But actually, this is one of those attacks where we don't want to talk about it esoterically, we want to look at the meta. And if we have a look at the top decks at the moment, what do we see? We got stuff like Arceus V... Arceus V-Star's got an ability. Although I will say, Arceus V-Star's also got an attack that can accelerate a bunch of damage to anything, so Arceus will be able to tech against this quite easily. What else is good right now? Palkia's good right now? Hang on a second. Palkia's got an ability. That's kind of annoying. Mew's pretty good, and to be fair, Mew actually doesn't have an ability, which is quite nice, so at least you can stop Mew. Yay! Although we all know Mew is not as good now as it used to be, and there are some really good counters to Mew. Something like Duraludon. Unfortunately, Duraludon's really good, but Duraludon also has an ability right now, so yeah, that's not going to work. And I'm not saying that every deck is going to be stopped by this, right? It's not. And I'm not going to pretend for a second that it is. But I am telling you that Arceus and Palkia and Duraludon, which, according to stats from places like Justin Basil on Twitter, are 3 of the 4 top decks in the format right now. Yeah, they're all here, ladies and gentlemen. They're all here. And that's kind of my point. You are stopping some of these top decks in the format. There's plenty around that you won't stop. But there are plenty that you will, and you go through anything that's blocking you. This is good. In terms of the attack cost, you do have double turbo energy. And one thing which is really important here, if we ignore VMAXs for a minute, which are kind of on the way out, and we focus on just your V-Star, well, actually, double turbo energy puts you down to 140, doubled because you're attacking twice as 280, which is what we see on any V-Star. So even with a double turbo energy, you are 2-hit KOing any V-Star. Double turbo energy is really not a big deal here, which is awesome. Plus, then you've got stuff like Melanie, which will accelerate that energy, which is rather lovely. And then you've got things like Frostlass and Frostmoth, which don't see as much play, admittedly, but they're still here. So yeah, the energy should not be a problem. Melanie and double turbo energy will pay this really quite nicely. And you go through any effects and you stop Pokemon with abilities. It'll shut some decks down. A lot of decks will have something they can use instead, but that gives you time and you can play something else as well. And then we've got a 0 energy V-Star attack. Yes, a V-Star attack for 0 energy. And that is the first time we've seen a 0 energy V-Star attack. We've seen some single energy V-Star attacks, but we've not seen any free V-Star attacks. Can it be any good? Well, what we've got here is 70 damage for each of your opponent's Pokemon V in play. This attack's not affected by weakness or resistance. Nice. That is really, really nice. Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, again, against something like Mew, which has basically got to play a bunch of Mew and a bunch of Genesect, I'm not saying you'll guarantee a KO every time, What I am saying is, if they've got 4 Pokemon V out and you attach a choice belt, that's 310. And if they've not got 4 Pokemon V out, they are deliberately hurting their setup to try and hurt you. And that doesn't sound so bad to me, ladies and gentlemen. This is really good. And the fact that it's for 0 energy means that it's always kind of there threatening your opponent. Sure, they can, and again, it's going to be one of those things where sometimes they go, ha 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 ha, I'm not going to do this. I'm deliberately not going to bench a Pokemon V I want to bench to try and hurt you. And I've said this many times before. Anytime your opponent deliberately doesn't do something they want to do to try and slow you down, that's kind of a win, honestly. That's a good thing, all right? That is a very good thing for you. If they're hurting themselves to try and slow you down, that's already a win. But there's going to be plenty of games your opponent has to bench that extra Pokemon V, and then you take advantage and get a KO for 0 energy. I really like this. I like the attack on the first Vulpix to getting some cheeky damage down early game, and it's not huge, but it's cheeky damage early game. I like the first attack. It's not a one-hit KO attack, but it goes through any effects in the defending Pokemon and gives you immunity from Pokemon with abilities, which is kind of amazing. As a quick ruling note here, it's not if the defending Pokemon has an ability when you attack. It is for as long as you remain active, any Pokemon with ability can't touch you. They can put you to the bench and bring you active again, and then you lose that protection. But for as long as you're active, anything that has an ability cannot touch you, and that's kind of awesome. It's not kind of awesome, it's completely awesome. And then you've got that 0 energy V-Star power, which can legit get big KOs. Like, that can legit get KOs on a bunch of different Pokemon. This is a really good Pokemon. I'm giving it between 4 and 5 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies. That would be barbaric. But there are a couple of other things to point out here before we finish that are pretty important. Because this opens the door. Has anyone looked at this card and not assumed that at some point in the not too distant future, we're getting Eevee V-Star and Pikachu V-Star? Because that was one of my first thoughts here. Pokemon are opening the floodgates to evolving Pokemon, or Pokemon with known evolutions, to use the correct term, to have V-Star. And you know what? Those two have got to be next in line. And also, I'm hearing rumours that this could have a character super rare. And obviously, if it did have a character super rare, it would be with Lily. Can anyone imagine what the price of a character super rare of Alolan Vulpix with Lily would be? That would be ridiculous. I pause a little bit here, because in previous sets, character super rares have always been Pokemon that don't have a V-Star in the set. So, in the previous set that had character super rares, we saw Gallade and Enamorus, neither of which had V-Stars. But I'm hearing rumblings, and it makes way too much sense not to. And does anyone... my only hope, right, all I'm saying is, if there is a Lily and Alolan Vulpix V character super rare, please, 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 please do not let Okacheke or Hyganasuke draw it, because I can't afford that card. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen, a really good V-Star, one that I absolutely was not expecting, and one that raised a couple of very interesting questions. But now it's over to you guys, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me what you think about this. Tell me how excited you are. Tell me which non-evolving or no known evolution Pokemon you want to see get V-Star. Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and Pokemon cards and other card games and all kinds of fun things. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get weekly bonus pods, answer all of your questions, and just generally hang out in the Discord and have a huge amount of fun. Like the lovely Martin Cornwall, one of our very favourites, who has been actually a supporter of PTCG Radio since I first started the podcast back in 2012. All of our patrons are very lovely people, and I give shout-outs to them for being lovely people. But Martin is especially lovely, because Martin has been here since the very, very beginning. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.